Welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast, where we look at marketing principles, strategies, and tactics through the lens of space. Hi, I am your host, Izzy House, and I am so excited to share this journey with you as we explore all the different space industries. On the previous episode, we met Steve Wolfe, president and co-founder of Beyond Earth Institute, and looked at the space policy industry. This is part 2 of his interview. So lift off in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast. Information relating to our discussion today and links to the video version can be found in the episode show notes on spacemarketingpodcast.com. Please like and subscribe to the podcast. It will help more people reach beyond the atmosphere. Information in this episode is for entertainment and information only. Please consult a professional for your specific situation. Beyond Earth Institute is a non-profit think tank that focuses on preparing for the future of humanity beyond our home planet. They conduct research, provide analysis, and offer recommendations on space policy proposals with implications spanning from the near term to the next 100 years. Policy will play a pivotal role in shaping the trajectory of the space development, and understanding its dynamics is crucial for what awaits us in the cosmos. In this interview, we explore what the Beyond Earth Institute and what they're doing at the Beyond Earth Symposium to pave the way for human habitation and work beyond Earth. In part 1, we got to know Steve Wolfe and his journey to space policy. Let's head into part 2 of our interview and begin with the question that will be at the heart of the Beyond Earth Symposium in November 1st through 2nd.
The conference is a day and a half, by the way. So it starts at about 1:30 on the 1st of November. And so we'll open it with an international conversation. And then in the second half of that day, we'll talk about we'll have a big question that will say, how do we make the case for communities beyond Earth? We have folks that are going to address this big question. Kind of anchoring this conversation is going to be Frank White, who is the author of The Overview Effect. You know, I've known Frank since he first published a book in 1987. And it seems in recent years, you hear the overview effect as a term almost every day in the space community, as every time there's a person that goes up into space and experiences the Earth for the first time, and that awe that many, many people feel is coined the overview effect. You know, to see the whole planet as one can be just an overwhelming peak experience or spiritual experience for a lot of people. Actually, we're going to have a very grounded conversation about making the case. Bobby Lal will be there. She just retired from the NASA as associate administrator. Pete Garretson, who is really one of the leading thinkers on space policy and just a whole range of issues. But at his core is someone who believes in this long-term mission of human expansion into space. So it's going to be a combination of like, what are the very, very practical reasons of why we're doing this? And then getting into some of the conversation about the existential reasons why we should be doing this. So it should be an interesting conversation. the overall structure and some of the speakers and so forth. So we'll have Lieutenant General John Shaw of the Space Command. We have a number of very prominent speakers who are moving out of their current roles right at this time. So General Shaw was the head of the Space Command for the U.S. Space Force. He's retired. He's literally, his last day is the day before he speaks. We're looking forward for a more candid conversation from him, although he has made no bones about the fact that he is a supporter of this long-term vision. And so he's sort of the kind of example of somebody who's like a no-nonsense general, has a huge amount of responsibility day-to-day, managing highly complex, especially in the military domain, complex series of issues. He also is able to take that step back and say, what is this trajectory that we're creating for ourselves? Where is this leading us? as not only as a nation, but as a civilization. Those are the folks that we attract, particularly. We'll hear from him. We'll hear from Bobby Lal. Now, in the beginning of the second day, our keynote is going to be Ken Bowersox, and he's the NASA Associate Administrator who oversees the ISS program and this very important transition period to the commercial space station. So he's very instrumental in this, and his keynote will then be followed by a robust panel discussion on issues relating to the post-ISS era and commercial space stations, and we'll have representatives from...
Which is only 6 years away.
Which is only 6 years away. It scares me.
Because we're almost done with this year.
Unfortunately, as these things come closer, there's a strong urge to just extend it. A lot of it will depend upon how fast these other commercial companies a commercial space station can bend metal, can get their systems up and running, can get ready for deployment. They can get.
And they should be in the next 2 years. I think we should see something pretty major in that arena.
Vast, for example, is claiming that they're going to be launching their first habitat like 2027. These other folks, I think, have aggressive schedules, to launch before the end of the decade as well. And NASA has said, through talking to anybody at NASA now will tell you, they want to have an overlap, meaning they want to have a period where the ISS is still flying and these commercial space stations are up there and operating, so that there's no gap, right? We're all familiar with what happened.
Had a gap, with the space shuttle program. There was a huge gap.
And then we were forced to send astronauts to the ISS on Russian rockets. How crazy was that? Maybe that wasn't such a big deal, 10 years ago, but now, I mean, you can't even imagine such a thing given the.
And you give all that power to one entity, and they're going to raise their prices, in which they did. So when that space shuttle program was ceased, it was because we could get it cheaper by hitchhiking a ride with the Russians. And then the Russians are like, yeah, well, we're the only game in town. Guess what? We're raising our prices. And then it became very expensive, and in more ways than just money.
And then with the COTS program, and then with the follow-on, the commercial crew, and it really made a huge difference. You have to say hats off to Musk. He and his unique set of looking at the problem and hadn't come along. It'd be challenged to see who else would have been a second. I think somebody else would have stepped up, but it really was SpaceX was a confluence of opportunity, need, and the right kind of person, that could create a company like SpaceX. And of course, now they completely dominate the commercial launch sector, completely. And then with the Starship, when that becomes operational,
he's been a master of marketing, which is one of the things that we need to really work with in order to get some of these messages out, so that it doesn't fail, it doesn't fall. The Apollo program was about outreach, and we were able to get the American people on board to make it to where a big portion of the budget was for the launches. And Elon Musk, he also was very instrumental in getting the marketing message out there, making sure that message was out there. And he parked a rocket in front of Capitol Hill so that he could get the opportunity to bid on some of these jobs. He put a red Tesla, launched the red Tesla out of the Falcon instead of a cinder block. So he has been a genius at marketing in most of his things. Outreach, public affairs, whatever you want to call it, is instrumental in getting this message out and making these things not wane, but actually thrive.
Well, I think, obviously, Musk these days is a bit of a two-edged sword, but he has an enduring huge following, especially, from the technology realm, who are just with him all the way. I personally would have wished that he did not wade into some of these political issues or want, Twitter. I think that he hurt his overall brand. And I think one of the issues that he has sort of promulgated is this ongoing conversation that, outer space is just for billionaire, rich boys, kind of thing. And as much as he is an important standard bearer, unfortunately, driving this narrative that that space is just for rich people who want to leave Earth behind now that we've junked up the planet, that kind of narrative, which nothing could be further from the truth. The fact that he created a company like Tesla and he created a company like Solar City, there's no question that his passion is to save the planet. In addition
There's no
to
question.
he understands intrinsically this yin yang. What I talk about in my book, you talk to anybody who's very, very passionate about humankind leaving this planet, you will find that in the very next breath is that their desire to save the planet, that we go so that we can save the planet in a wide range of ways, that going out relieves the stress and strain that humans are putting on the planet and creates new opportunity for innovation that can then be brought back to the planet and be implemented here so that we can be not only go outward in space, but we also could be turn and nurture the planet. You know, there are always going to be people that are going to want to go outward and strike outward. There are always going to be people that are going to want to stay on the planet and nurture the planet. And that's a good thing. And I think ultimately we'll come to that realization. We may actually have to get into space for a while. We may have to start establishing these communities beyond Earth where it's fully understood by the largest portion of the population.
The whole idea of actually doing settlements, you know, we are in our little bubble here with the planet. So in order to leave it, we have to create new bubbles and new ecosystems. And in order to not die, we got to figure out how to do that and thrive. So when we do that, we find out all the technologies and how the human body works and what we need. And then we can take all that technology and put it back down into the big bubble, our home, and clean the air, clean the water. You know, we can see the pollution from outside looking in. And it's just, it's almost imperative that we go so and do that so that we know how to do it down here. In my mind. Yeah.
I could not have said it any better. You said it exactly right. But basically by recreating Earth, right? For us to live in space in a healthy way so that our bodies can we need to recreate Earth or the Earth environment. And right. That's kind of a challenge. And the challenge of by doing so, we will learn an enormous amount about the biosphere, our home biosphere, and how we might be able to take that technology back to Earth. So I could not say it better. And I like you said bubble in my book, that I argue or make the case, if you will, that if we see the planet as a whole living system, right? If you're familiar with the Gaia Hypothesis, which says that the Earth is basically a whole single living system, and all the life that's within it are subsystems of this whole Earth system.
And they're critical, Yeah, the lonely ant is critical to our survival.
Yeah, the ant, the bee, and much has been said about this, is that we are interconnected with life on Earth. And gosh, if we were to do away with we would die basically without the ecosystem, right? So, but if we look at Earth as a single living system, we could say that this living system at one point would want to reproduce itself, right? And so how would a world system reproduce itself with all these life systems that are within it? Well, you could argue that it would need to have emerged within that life system a particular life form that had the capacity for recreating or creating seed pods, if you will, that could carry the seeds of life to other planetary shores. And so, of course, the logical conclusion there would be that humankind actually emerged on Earth. So for just that purpose. I say that our purpose is actually twofold, that we emerge on Earth for twofold, both to expand beyond Earth and also to protect Earth. And so right now we're in this crazy transition right now. In order to get the capabilities, in order to leave Earth, we're kind of putting stress on the planet. But once we leave Earth, then we really can get really serious about protecting Earth. It's a way of looking at this and a way of looking at our particular role.
Hold on to your boosters. We will be right back with guest Steve Wolfe with Beyond Earth Institute after a brief message from our sponsors. Please like and subscribe to the Space Marketing Podcast wherever you listen.
Very large scheme of the future.
And the name of the book for the listeners is Beyond the Obligation, a journey to discover human purpose on Earth and in the cosmos.
Yeah.
So
just the obligation. Yes. And
there it is right there. Yes.
And the first person who emails me, I will send a copy of this book to.
And the email will be in the show notes.
First person that sends me an email says, please send me a copy. Here's my address. I'll send it to you. So as long, yeah. And although if it's on the other side of the planet, I'm not sure, but we'll see. Yeah.
Well, and let's talk about how you promote. Like I was saying earlier, when the Apollo program did it, there was a lot of promotion behind it in order to make it happen. So, what are some of the outreach challenges that your group has actually encountered, and how are you dealing with them?
And we kind of go back and forth on this a little bit. This question: how public should our role be? Right. So, as a think tank, our main audience are the space policy deciders, right, in Washington and international. That's our main audience. But we do feel that we have a secondary role to play in terms of educating the public as to the importance of the why. Well, why would you be advancing such a vision? Why do we need to move beyond this planet? And there's still plenty of people that ask that.
Why did we go to California? Why did we feel the need to cross the United States and establish on the other side? There's a very human need to keep reaching.
And if you go to some 50,000 years ago, we were a species on the plains of Africa, right? Something happened, right? We changed just a little bit from the other animals that were on there. And suddenly we realized we developed this appetite for migrating from one place to the other. So we talk a lot about like the age of European expansionism, over the last 500 years. But that really is just sort of the end of a process that's been going on for some 50,000 years for the human race. So it's not Europeans, it's like everybody. So the Native Americans in America didn't just pop up there. They got there because their ancestors migrated over the Bering Strait from Russia, or from what is now Russia, into Alaska, and then down, and then filtered all the way down to South America. Over a relatively short amount of time, really kind of remarkable. Over like just a few thousand years, this happened, which is really incredible. So this impetus, part of it is, and we could call it economic, but maybe in those early times, economics meant hunting grounds,
right,
feeding grounds. Where's there's more interesting food? Where do we go to find the food? So, and that's economic. That's really economics means, how do I feed myself, right? How do I get the money? So I go to store, so I get the food to feed myself. So it really hasn't changed that much, in 50,000 years, if you kind of think about it. This is intrinsically part of us, right? So we've just called it different names over time, right? In some ways, it's taken uglier turns in how we approach this, and especially when two cultures that had not met each other suddenly meet each other, like they did during the Age of Discovery. It was particularly horrific. Which
is one of the things that you discuss, is making sure that we don't repeat some of those bad behaviors while we're trying to do economic endeavors, because economics can make people ugly.
It is a challenge as we move forward into space. So people are concerned that we're going to create these mining sweatshops where the workers are going to be abused, because they're so far from Earth.
There is some, we do that on Earth as it is, in a lot of countries. So why wouldn't we repeat those if they have no oversight? So it is a very valid concern.
Exactly. And I think that and I would not for the one say that's not going to happen. I think that's part of what an organization like Beyond Earth is trying to do also. As we move out, we need these set of guidelines that protects the rights of individuals, regardless where in space they are. Now, some of our members have argued that, we have laws in the United States that protect workers. And so
Yeah.
any U.S. company that's operating in space is still bound by those laws. Now it's a little tenuous, and it does need to be something that is internationally understood, and then ultimately we would need oversight and enforcement. These are long-term questions, right? Company XYZ wants to mine ice on the south pole of the moon. There'll be a bunch of hoops to even get that thing. But I think one of those hoops is going to be a guarantee about how the individuals on those facilities are going to be treated. And they need to abide by that. And there needs to be mechanisms for making sure that that's the case. And if they aren't, then there needs to be enforcement principles in place to do that. And I think we should not go out without having all of that clear. We don't want a situation where it's just the Wild West, with completely unfettered guidelines. And the reality is, and I know that there's a lot of folks in the space arena have a strong libertarian bent. I don't want the government telling me what to do, kind of thing. But the reality is, most people serious people want to do businesses in space, want to invest money in space activities. They want to know what the rules of the road are. They want to understand very clearly what's going to happen. What are the oversight things? Because they want to know what the environment is. They don't want to invest in something where there aren't clear government. Right.
We don't want pirates in space. We don't want to invest, billions of dollars to set up a moon base to do something and then just have another country that is not part of this agreement come in and just take it over. And then all the investment is gone. So it's very important that everybody be on the same page. And the people that are the worst offenders of the sweatshops, they're also not the ones that are playing, with everybody right now. So that's something to, that needs a lot of discussion. This is not a US thing. This is a world thing. This is a space thing. And we don't want to go to war up there. We want to do it right this time.
Well said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, very well said. We're in an adversarial situation right now with China. China has a space station. They are recruiting other nation states to become partners in their space station. Fortunately, there is a polarization taking place right now, especially in the space domain and geopolitically, frankly. God willing, this does not result in global hostility, a global outbreak of another world war of any kind. There's nothing wrong with competition, right?
Friendly competition, yes.
Well,
it helps people grow. Yeah.
Even not so friendly competition,
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with friendly competition, is what I'm saying.
There's nothing wrong with friendly competition, absolutely. And I think that if China and their circle of interest,
Russia, yes, Russia's been very openly aggressive with North Korea right now. So their new summit meetings.
These things are very disconcerting. The BRICS bloc of nations. This is Brazil, Russia, India, and so forth. That group of nations is growing. Bloc of nations growing, doesn't include the United States. So there is a polarization, unfortunately, a new order, if you will, of geopolitical alignment that's sort of taking place even as in real time, which is very concerning.
Which makes the outreach that much more important because, a lot of people do not realize their connection with space on just a daily basis. They look at their phone, they don't see space, which their phone is nothing but space. If an adversary were to take our satellites and put them out of commission, it would be a game changer down here. And people don't realize how fragile that connection is and how important that security is. So creating awareness of how space interacts with their daily lives is critical, especially when they're maybe not aware of these things, because quite honestly, a lot of the people that are protecting us really can't talk openly about a lot of the things that they're seeing and that they're dealing with. So because it's just, we want to be nice. And so there's a lot that the average person is not aware of that's happening and that can really control their life. And this is why outreach, of policy is so critical. And
Well, right. I think, and actually, and I need to give you a link. We just put out a wonderful new video. I don't know if you saw it. It was posted on LinkedIn. Did you see that? I'd love for you to do a link to that. That's somewhat public facing. We speak in fairly broad terms why the Beyond Earth Institute exists and what our mission is and why it's so important. But it was posted on space.com. We got almost 2,000 views, on space.com. So a lot of people have seen that. There is a chat field under space.com for these things. And, some people are saying, wow, this is cool. I want to go. When can I get, where can I get my ticket? Then there are other people saying, oh, I can't wait to see the mining sweatshops, very sarcastically. There is an undercurrent of concern and apprehension. Maybe
But I would like to stress that
Mhm.
just because you have somebody that's going to do something negative like that does not mean that you do not support the positive going, because China is going. Whether or not we do as the US or Europe, they are still going, and those things are still going to be out there. And the only way we can make it to where, it's a positive environment out there is if we support it and
Yeah.
we give the other side more more space. If we just say, oh, we're just not going to play because there's all these negative things, like space debris and all that, then that just gives the other actors that do not have your best interest at heart, it gives them more power.
Exactly. And you hit the nail right on the head that if for Congress, especially, they're not moved by any kind of visionary thought of the future. They're
No, they're
viewed,
moved
they're,
by
they're
their.
moved by the fact that China is doing it and we're not. And we better keep up the pace. Otherwise, they're going to get ahead of us. Their threat is only going to be increased more and more. So, and that really is the message that's resonating on Capitol Hill. We've been told that. We've been told that, by committee staff. They said, listen, just make sure you mention China. Make sure you mention China in any of these conversations. And that is, that's the reality of geopolitics. Is that, let's face it, most members of Congress are very, very narrow-minded individuals, unfortunately.
They're working for their constituents in the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, they're working for interests.
Yeah.
And those interests, whoever's got the most power or more pull, that's where the direction is going to go for that particular legislative person.
That's right. And that's a reality. We don't want to. You have to understand that, and that's how you push the buttons. Who can you get to? Who can get to the congressman? How do you couch this thing in a way that is politically valuable to the members that have oversight and so forth?
And how do you
That's
educate their constituents so that they make it to where it is a point of contention and they make their legislators pay attention?
Yeah, indeed,
So, yeah.
indeed. Yeah, and I think that's something we could support, but that's largely the role of the advocacy community, National Space Society, the Space Frontier Foundation, some other. Actually, it seems like every time I turn around, there's another space group popping up somewhere that are trying to do something. A lot of the STEM activity is also very important. A lot of organizations being formed around STEM to promote space STEM. And of course, that's where, you grow up being excited about space, then you're going to be more likely to vote in that way. I think the cover of the National Space Society magazine, I think, said, where is our Greta? Did you see that? Do you read that magazine? Are you a member of NSS?
I am a member, yes.
I
So
think
I just missed that one.
yeah, it said, where's our Greta? And so, and in the cover, they have a picture of Greta. It's an artist's rendition of her inside of a spacesuit, standing on a bunch of space junk or something. But the focus is on, of course, space junk and how do we remove it, manage it. Unfortunately, is still an existential challenge
Oh,
that
there's all kinds of
we
politics in that, because
we
of
haven't quite fully gotten our
yeah.
arms around it. I think there's a lot of positive initiatives that are underway, but we're far from totally dealing with the space debris issue, debris mitigation. There's some efforts, but we got a long way to go on that front as well. We're going to be talking about a lot of these issues at this symposium, so certainly want to encourage folks to go to the website, and check out the agenda. If this is an area of interest to them, there are ways of getting involved with our organization. You don't necessarily have to be a lobbyist or a space lawyer. If the idea of making changes to the policy arena resonates with you, we'd love to hear from you, get you involved. We're very fortunate that we have, if you go to our website, now our website is different from the symposium site. So the website is just beyondearth.org. If you go to our website and you look at the people involved, we have folks that have a lot of pedigree in terms of space policy over the years, both in terms of our team members as well as our advisors. These are folks that are helping to shape our agenda. They come with legal and policy chops that are helping us to sort of do this in, as I like to say, in a very sober way. We're approaching this in a very sober way, but also always trying to keep that vision in mind. And I think that's important. There's always this risk in Washington, if you talk about communities beyond Earth, that's a little bit too far beyond the horizon. Folks, they just want to look at what are the near-term things. Where is the government spending money now? That's where everybody's concerned about. So, the government's spending money on CLD. So there's this little feeding frenzy around that bucket of money. That's the reality. There's nothing wrong with that. If we can help to steer that in a way that's more sustainable over time, we want to be part of that conversation. That's why the conference itself, the symposium, Beyond Earth Symposium, really helps to sort of bring all those stakeholders together to reinforce these messages. We'll have people from the Hill there, people from industry, people from academia, people from the White House, from the various agencies, NASA, Department of Commerce, FAA. All these folks will sort of be there and sort of reinforce this overarching message in the context of the issues that they're grappling with today. Make it really okay to talk about this arc of history, arc of space development, to modify a famous phrase. The arc of human expansion into space is long, but it leads to communities living and working in space. And the more we can sort of be more comfortable about recognizing that and just being matter of fact about it, whether we have a stated goal of creating a community beyond Earth or not, if we can just feel comfortable that that's where we're going,
that is not science fiction, and it
No.
shouldn't be treated as science fiction. It's science. It's science future.
It's science future. Yes, I like that. It's not science fiction. It's science future. Can I borrow that? I want to.
You absolutely can.
But that it couldn't have been said better, because it is our future. And we just need to accept it. See, and this is way back. I wrote another op-ed for Space News way back, and I said, we need a context, because a lot of people could just say, well, why the hell are we spending people to the moon again? What a big waste. And they said that back in the day, right?
Oh, we had a lot of civil unrest. We had a lot of change going on in our country during that time, and so there was other places to Vietnam War. I mean, there was a lot going on that could have been spent in there, but the value that we have received back from us going to space in just I mean, like, you're wearing glasses right now, and my glasses are over here. The coating on the glasses, were on the helmets of the astronauts. Just the medical advances and the technology advances that we have benefited from as a society. It's so far reaching that it surrounds us.
As you said at the top of the program, had we continued with the Apollo program logically, and maybe at that point establish a lunar base, even as we created a space station in low Earth orbit, which certainly would have been very appropriate and so forth, and done these other things, bringing back even more and more technology, and we'd be there. And so there's so much more to do. As we said, that it's a very exciting time. You have two of the richest men in the world who have unequivocally stated that their desire in life is to help to create a multiplanetary existence for humanity. That's not insignificant, and that has spurred huge excitement. Even with that, there's no certainty.
Well, and there's something I say when you hear the narrative going about, well, it's a rich man's playground, and that you had discussed earlier, and I, for one, am really glad that there are some rich people out there that are spending their money in ways that benefit the regular people. There's lots of rich people out there that we don't even know who they are, that do not spend any money to benefit humankind. So I'm really happy that there are a group of them and that do invest into our future. And they may come across a little bit, you know,
Entitled, yeah.
not contentious at times, and but their vision is really paving the way for some really amazing things. Elon Musk, just to give a little bit of context, he lives in a $50,000 house, and Richard and Bezos just announced that he will be giving away the bulk of his fortune, and to benefit humankind. So, I'm glad that they're spending it on us.
There's a whole thread there that you're bringing up as to how this future unfolds, right? So the reality is, like any new technology, which included the airplane, the automobile, even cell phones or computers, these items are always initially out of reach to most people. So there was always this period where, for early adopters, pay an exorbitant amount of money in order to have that experience or that gadget or that, whatever it is.
The jet setters, that whole term was because they were affluent people that were able to fly.
Well, there you go. And now, I mean, of course, everybody, I could visit my daughter in San Diego for a few $100. So now that's been democratized, air travel. And I think that's going to be the logical transition. And what's nice though about the period that we're moving into is that it's no longer completely dominated by government, right? So during the Apollo era and a couple of decades after that, it was all about government spending, right? The US government was spending X billions of dollars on NASA. And therefore, when there was a public outrage in one way or another, then it was easier for the cutbacks to be made because it wasn't a private sector as such. Now there's sort of an emerging independent private sector in space that's independent of government. Not that they don't want government dollars, they certainly do. And they're getting it from DARPA and DOD and other agencies beyond NASA.
ESA. Yeah. I mean, it's not just the United States. Yeah.
So to a certain extent, if there's negative public outrage or whatever, to a certain extent, the private sector is independent. As long as the private sector has customers, and as long as they don't do anything that is contrary to getting the appropriate licensing and so forth, they can go into space and they can do whatever they want. And it doesn't really matter, to a certain extent, it doesn't matter what kind of negative comments there are out there.
Instead of being the train, they have to get on the train like everybody else. So, the train is still leaving the depot. And, so space will happen. It's just how large is our part going to be in it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question.
Exactly. Well, how large our part will be is the question.
That's the exciting thing about it right now, is that genie is out of the bottle.
The genie's out of the bottle. That's a good way. That's a good way of putting it. Genie's out of the bottle, and we have folks that are really committed.
My final question of the day is one that I always ask. And what final thoughts do you have that you want to leave your audience with today? What do you want them to mull around in their head as they go about their day going, I need to think about this?
Oh, that's a good question. I would ideally like people, in addition to checking out the Beyond Earth Symposium page, which is, I think I'd love for them to mull that and to take a look at the page. And if you're in the policy domain or is interested to become more involved, you're certainly welcome to join us. I want folks to think of a greater context for everything that we're doing in space right now. Kind of speaks largely to what we've been, the whole arc of this conversation, I think. We're doing some interesting stuff right now. NASA's planning to go back to the moon with women. How cool is that?
Women of color, yes. Yes.
So. And we're going to be planting flags, and we're going to be planting footprints on the lunar surface again for the first time in 60 years. It's a crazy length of time. And that's exciting, in and of itself. But if we just do that, and it's not in a context of recognizing that the humans that emerged on this planet is just that we emerged on this planet, and that our existence expands. We are essentially creatures of the universe, right? We're creatures certainly of the solar system. And as we look to establish greater and greater human presence in space, ultimately that will lead to new branches of civilization that will exist on the moon, on Mars, and other places in the solar system. That future is hard to see right now, but within 100 years, it's not going to be so unusual. Certainly within 200 years, there could be communities throughout the universe thriving, contributing to all of solar system economy, and it'll just be a new realm, a new era of human existence. That's going to be exciting, and I think we should embrace that. And we should embrace the fact that this moment right now, really, these few years, these few decades are the transitional time. We should be really kind of excited about that we are alive in this moment. And if you are inclined to be part of this process, it has to be so inspiring. And I encourage anyone who's inclined, maybe if you're younger, if you're in certain, hats off to you if you're in the space industry, and if your interest is in this domain, figure out a way to get in, be part of this period, because it really is exciting. I'm excited to be part of this with Beyond Earth. This is my contribution. This is a mechanism where people certainly can be part of this process. But I think if we lead with the vision, then all of the other technical parts of this will kind of come together. And that's where I'm coming from. So thank you, Izzy, for welcoming me.
Oh, my pleasure. And, please look at their website. And if you want to define what the next 100 years is going to look like as we go forth, definitely be a part of this initiative. A special thanks to Steve Wolfe with Beyond Earth Institute for sharing his journey to space. Be sure to catch him at the Beyond Earth Symposium, November 1st through 2nd, 2023, at the American University Washington School of Law in Washington, D.C., as well as the GSA Spaceport Summit on January 29th in Orlando, Florida. Get those links along with a lot of other ones in the show notes. Please like and subscribe to the Space Marketing Podcast so you can help us get the word out about this incredible industry of space. I hope that you have found this podcast useful for your journey as you reach for those stars.